We call it senior school, but it's the same thing, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I continue to like music. The Beatles and what I know is called in the States the British invasion, but it's the British bands of the time, the rock bands such as the Dave Clark Five, the Beatles, the Kinks, the Small Faces. I won't mention Herman's Hermits, although I just did it. But they were on the TV, they were on the radio.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. So that was my music. Loved it. I loved it. The Beatles were number one, but the other bands I loved as well. So coming into senior school, high school, I was heavily into that. Met a whole group of other friends who were into it, and even formed a rock band, which went on for 3 or 4 years.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Listing Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are continuing to march toward new Bruce tour dates. I'm excited to be recording in 2023, and I have, in a timey-wimey way, one of my favorites, where it's my afternoon, my guest evening. Alex, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. And as I said before, thank you very much for shifting times to make up for, I think, 7-hour time difference over here in Spain.
Yes, absolutely. So it's always nice. It is funny because, I have a booking calendar, and I try to do Wednesday nights, just kind of, it works out well for family reasons, but it's, 8 p.m. Central Time and 9 p.m. Central Time. And so when I have European guests, or Australia and New Zealand is really the one that you've got to, figure out times. So yeah, when you went, oh, that's 4 a.m, Jesse, could we do something else? I'm like, yes, we can. So tell us a little about yourself.
Okay, well, these days I live in Valencia on the eastern coast of Spain. It's about 3 miles. It's about 3 hours drive south of Barcelona, and it's Spain's third city. So it's a pretty kind of lively place, but nothing like the bigger cities. I moved here from London around about 4 years ago. After a long corporate career, long corporate career, I saw the light left. I became more of a writer and able to devote more time to my passion, which is, as I'm a hobby musician as well, call it a hobby musician, an avocation. Where I play guitar and piano, and I wanted to improve on that, and I wanted a better lifestyle. So now I'm writing and playing guitar and piano and annoying the neighbors, who may not be so keen on Bruce Springsteen and other Beatles songs here in Spain as I might be. But I've had no complaints.
Good.
In my writing, I kind of write a lot about music and mostly articles, which is where we met through an article I'd written on Bruce Springsteen. I also dabble a bit in English language and grammar and things like that. We won't talk about that today because it can be a bit dry. But mostly my music writing is in the classic rock niche, which fits very nicely with Bruce.
It does. There is a synergy there. So thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to talking a lot more about your writing and your own music, but I always like to start at the beginning. So talk to me, where did you grow up, and what kind of music did your family listen to?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I guess I'm going to be a little different to many other musicaholics like us. I grew up in a town around about 25 miles east of London, along kind of the River Thames. It's a part of the country which is sort of industrialized, if you like. I like to liken it to New Jersey. Not that I've been to New Jersey, but hear about it. My working class family were largely uninterested in music, so I was an anomaly. So from an early age, I was listening to the radio. So there was little music in my house as such, but for some reason I was just addicted to it. My nan did play piano, so when I went to visit my London nan, as opposed to my Scottish nan, she'd play the piano and she'd let me plonk around, 5 or 6 years old. And my aunt, my young aunt, who was about 14, gave me a load of Beatles records as well. And somebody, I can't remember who, a family friend, gave us a record player, which became my record player. And so I played Beatles songs and any other things.
Alex, why
yeah.
do you think you had that calling for music, even though your family didn't? To give you a little background, right? I grew up, my dad was in the Army, my mom, so we traveled a lot, but my mom and dad adored country music, right? Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, whatever was on the radio. I have told this story multiple times. When I was about 10 or 12, one of my cousins in Ohio could not believe I could not name all 4 Beatles. But the Beatles weren't played in my household, right? So it was in my genes. To this day, I will hear an old country music song and I will start singing, and my wife will look at me like, how the hell do you know the song? So where do you think that gene came from you?
I touched on my grandmother.
Yeah.
So there was obviously some musical ability in the family. She could play the piano, and she played it well. And these days, my mother enjoys music. I guess it's kind of like a backward teaching. I think the fact music wasn't played was more to do with the environment. I touched on the fact it was a very working class environment. My father got up early, went to work, came home fairly tired. He wanted dinner. He wanted nothing more than to watch TV. So I think it was perhaps the environment as opposed to the lack of genes, which were possibly around. So that's my only guess. My aunt liked music and played it a lot when we visited a lot. So there was kind of a music thing, but really, I can't put my finger on it. It was just that when I used to hear music on the radio and I'd sit in the living room, put the radio on all by myself, play music stations. So it was in me.
Yeah, it's kind of like Bruce's father, right? Like that whole going to work, from factory, that whole persona.
I didn't have what Bruce had with his father's against music. My parents were very happy. It was far nicer to like music than perhaps other activities. They had no concern at all. So even when I finally got a guitar, they bought me a guitar because I asked for one. Mm-hmm. So they had no problem. They were not so interested themselves.
Okay.
So it was an open environment. I want a guitar, Dad. Okay.
Yeah. It isn't that they didn't, it isn't that they didn't support it. It's just it was not what they were passionate about.
It wasn't what they were passionate about. Yeah. But if I was, great.
Yeah. When you started getting teenage and went to, in America, we call high school, right? And then on to university, where did your music fandom take you? You mentioned now you love classic rock, but what kind of music were you listening to as you got older?
We call it senior school, but it's the same thing, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I continue to like music. The Beatles and what I know is called in the States the British Invasion, but it was the British bands of the time, the rock bands such as the Dave Clark Five, the Beatles, the Kinks, the Small Faces. I won't mention Herman's Hermits, although I just did it. But they were on the TV, they were on the radio. Yeah. That was a big thing. So that was my music. Loved it. I loved it. The Beatles were number one, but the other bands I loved as well. So coming into senior school, high school, I was heavily into that. met a whole group of other friends who were into it, and even formed a rock band, which went on for 3 or 4 years. By the end of high school, that was my music. I was playing guitar in a band. We weren't terribly successful, but we were having a lot of fun. I think the only US band that I was really got into, and I even went to see at the time, was Alice Cooper. So
Okay.
that really was, again, my style. That really, when I heard him on the music channel here, on the music program on TV, I liked that as well, and all the showmanship. So that was another. But he was possibly the only real US singer that I liked at that time. It was very, very heavily UK focused, and even as I started going to the pubs at that time, I know I was a little young, but that's where there was a lot of live rock music, and it was a similar style. The local bands played that style as we did, and we were playing that kind of a touch of Beatles, a lot of Rolling Stones. That the type of music.
Sure.
And I think we threw in No More Mr. Nice Guy as well, because Alice was one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
So that's where we were towards the end. So when I left school, that's what I was doing.
One of my one of the other things I do is I'm a big fan of one of the Dallas locals all sports talk station, right? And one of the talk show hosts told the story that he ran into Alice Cooper like at a golf course or something, and
he golf, isn't he?
Yeah, and he was cussing, not Alex, the host was, and and Alice, I don't like that kind of language. And
No.
the host was shocked, like embarrassed, like Alice Cooper, who the wildest stage persona, just called me out for speaking inappropriately. So
I think he grew up in a very nice religious type family,
yes.
and I think he was a bit of, that's what I mentioned, No More Mr. Nice Guy. I believe that song was about the reaction from his family and friends and local
Yeah.
neighborhood to his persona. But it's a stage act.
It is. So can you remember when you discovered Bruce, and
Certainly
what
can,
about
yes.
him spoke to you?
Well, as often happened in those days, I caught Bruce on the radio. I used to watch a lot of, we had a couple of great music programs weekly in the UK on the BBC. One was Top of the Pops, which is a little more pop orientated, and we had the Old Grey Whistle Test, which was rock orientated.
Yeah.
But they didn't have Bruce Springsteen on those. He came on the radio with Born to Run. It was about September 75, around that time. And I think the last time I'd heard anything like it that shocked me, because it kind of exploded out the radio. There was sound, there was this singer singing with an incredible passion. I'd last heard with that kind of passion and enthusiasm going back to She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand, where the Beatles had that kind of, they gave it their all. So the first thing that caught me was this, what the hell is this? And I hadn't been grabbed. I mean, I like all music, that kind of rock music, but this was kind of like a next level. I bought the record, I think after 2 hearings on the radio. I bought the album, sorry. I just went straight to the album rather than the singles, And wow, it was it blew me away, because again, it was the passion of Bruce and the way he sings it, and the musicians. The E Street Band, we'll probably talk about them again. They're not they're not a session band, are they? They feel it as well. So
Yes.
it was that. But the other thing was, as I'm sure we'll touch on as we go through and talk about other favorite songs, is the lyrics. I demand good lyrics. Okay, I Want to Hold Your Hand and things like that when I was 6 and 7 were nice. The music and the passion was nice, but the lyrics were kind of a little obvious. the Springsteen's lyrics were kind of the next level. He was singing poetry, but not only poetry, he was singing to a working class boy about working class things. Okay, New Jersey, but when he spoke about New Jersey, it sounded like my hometown. So, and even these days, I got a lot of US expat friends over here in Valencia. So, what is it about Bruce Springsteen? He's so American. I said, well, yeah, but he's also understands, and his lyrics, whether they're about tunnel of love, breakups, or that's in the future from what we're talking about now, but certainly on Born to Run. Okay, I wasn't born to run. By that time I was at work and I was careful, but the idea of the freedom and breaking away from things, even at my level, I was breaking away from certain restrictions and gaining education and getting money. So you could read into him what you want, but on top of this incredible explosion of sound was really meaningful lyrics. Worked fantastically. So I was done. I was cold.
Yeah, I agree. At times my family calls it an obsession. I like to call it a passion. It's probably a little bit of both. I think of that scene in that movie, Blinded by the Light,
Yeah.
where at the end, his father, his father goes, I think this Bruce Springsteen is Pakistani because, and it's that universal, right?
Kind of what I said. I think Bruce Springsteen is English.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
and it's the same thing. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, and I think in another life we used to joke about he would have been one hell of a Southern preacher, right? Like in a different life, if he had grown up in the South and decided to go into the, in the clerical world, he would have been one hell of a preacher. So yeah. So you went and bought the album. You're listening.
Yes.
What was next in your Bruce journey?
Well, on the Bruce journey, I'd started work quite early. I started work about 15 years old. But in those days, before it sounds like, well, 15 years old.
Yeah.
A lot of companies paid for your education. So I joined at 15 and they immediately sent me to college.
Okay.
Gave me a wage and sent me to college. So that's a great opportunity. So I was going to college in North London, and all around North London were these posters of Bruce Springsteen, Hammersmith Odeon. And there was a expression from Rolling Stone, the future of rock or something like that. I can't remember exactly. And I'd heard the album, saw that he was coming to London, and I was desperate to go. Problem is, West London, okay, I lived outside of London on the east, and West London, it was a 2 or 3 hour journey across the city and everything like that. I wanted someone to go with. Nobody had ever heard of Bruce Springsteen that I knew. Nobody would go with me. I think it was like a Wednesday night or something. So I didn't go to the Hammersmith Odeon thing that I could have gone to. Now it's kind of forever. It's my biggest regret because that was such a big deal. I've seen the videos now, but it is not the same. I've got the video. It's in one of the box sets, isn't it? The video. So that's the next stage of the journey was a great disappointment. I didn't go.
So what I love about this story is I totally feel that way. I had a guy on a few years ago that saw Bruce during that time period when, not at the show where John Landau said, I've seen the future of rock and roll, but during that time period, right? And that's when he discovered him. And he said he looked at his date at the time and said, this guy is going to be amazingly successful. And he shared that he regretted that because he lived in Jersey, all these shows before that he hadn't got to see.
Yeah.
And I said, it doesn't matter whether you become a fan in 76, 80, 88, 2002, you always wish you could have been there earlier, right? I could have seen earlier. I grew up in once my dad retired from the Army, my parents divorced and we settled in a little town called Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is only like 3 hours from Houston. And I graduated high school in 77. And I
Mhm.
like to think that if I had known, I could have gone and seen Bruce in Houston in one of these little clubs, right? He was only
Mhm.
3 hours away, but I had no idea who he was and I wasn't sure. So that's it. When did you get to see him perform live? You missed out that one, but when did you finally get to go?
81 on the River Tour
Okay.
in London, in West London again, different location. This was at Wembley Arena, which is it's actually a sports arena. It's an indoor sports arena. I think it holds
Okay.
and it was the River Tour. And we'll come back to the River because that's my favorite album.
Okay.
But uh, it was, in fact, it was probably the River that I realized this was something different for me as an artist. By the time I got to the River, as much as the other ones were just incredible albums, Darkness and Born to Run. But I went to the River show, 81. I think it was towards the summer at the arena. And wow, I mean, I hadn't really seen him. I'd seen him on TV, but it's not quite the same. And I've seen him since. But as a young man, what was he then? 26, maybe something like that. I can't remember. I'd never seen anything like it. So talk about the music and the passion. He was an artist. He was on top of the speakers, jumping down from the speakers. He was running along Bitten's piano. He was sliding along the stage. It was 3 hours of show. This was a performance and a half. So talk about the River album grabbing me. The show was like, my wife says to me now, she goes, I really worry about you. This is kind of, it's not passion, it's something more. So, but you didn't see the River Tour.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't understand. It's a Bruce thing. I always like to preface this, Alex, with the amount of times you've seen Bruce perform live
Mm-hmm.
is not a fair barometer of how big a fan you are. There are people
No.
that have never been lucky enough to see him perform live. In fact, I've been stressing that over and over again to people on social media, like, there is people who have discovered Bruce since that River Redo tour that have never
Mm-hmm.
seen the E Street Band. And so, but for the record, how many times have you seen him live? Do you count?
Yeah, I've seen him 4 times live,
Okay.
all in London. And the reason it's only 4 was because 2 years after the River Tour in 81, my son was born.
Okay.
And then 3 years later than that, my daughter was born. So that kind of took, although I still bought Bruce music and I still listened to Bruce. In fact, I even had some headphones, like that. And my wife would watch TV and I'd had Bruce on my headphones. But really going to a show for a few years was going to be difficult. So there was a period of time where I didn't go to. He comes to London all the time. As often as he tours the States, he'll come over to London. But yeah, 4 times in total, and it will be 5 later this year in again another show in London.
Nice.
I did try to get the Barcelona tickets, but you know all the story of the scalpers and the
Yeah.
Costa tickets, and so we won't cover
Well,
that here. But I couldn't get the Barcelona tickets, but I could get London tickets.
good, good. So it sounds like the River really spoke to you. Can you articulate why that album of all of them
Yeah,
means so much to you?
yeah. The I love rock music, so Born to Run just hit the spot for all the reasons, plus more. Darkness also had the classic rock songs on it as well as a few slowies, but the River had a wider range. Okay, I know it's a double. So it kicks off with Ties That Bind, classic Bruce type stuff. There's a number of other rockers on there. We've got the radio friendly, so there's the rockers. So I'm happy with all those rockers. And then you got some nice radio-friendly tunes, you know, Hungry Heart and Little Girl, I Want to Marry You, those kind of things. They're cool as well. I like a bit of pop, nice catchy tunes. But the things that really spoke to me were the more the slowy and the ballads, the things like Fade Away, and also The River, the title track is obvious, but you know, The Stolen Car, you know, the message in Stolen Car, you know, the allusions to infidelity and things like that, just so clever. And he even finishes off on three slowies on the final side. And it was those slow ones, those more in-depth ones that showed a different side of Springsteen to me. From, okay, yeah, The Darkness had that. But I felt like on The River, particularly with the lyrics, there was Independence Day about his relationship with his father and the way he stood up to him and things. Okay, I didn't have that issue, but it was clearly raw for him, and that kind of story, that kind of storytelling within great music was really when, and still is. I still play The River more than any other Springsteen album.
So were you disappointed when, you know, in the US he did that The River in full, but then he went to Europe, he didn't do it? Were you disappointed you didn't get to see during that last show the whole, you know, River from front to back?
It would have been great. I did see him play Darkness front to back, which was
okay, sure,
kind of nice. I saw that later on. He played it at Wembley on the Wrecking Ball tour. Funny enough, he played the Darkness album all the way through. Yeah, but I am really. I love the album. I've got the vinyl still, and I still play the vinyl as well as. And of course, I've also got the Ties That Bind box set. And then when I hear the ones that he left off, I think, why wasn't this a treble?
yeah,
Quadruple,
exactly,
you know?
yes, that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts of some of like Letter to You and Western Stars and the Covers album?
All right, I'll take these one by one because I've got a different thing
Please.
to say about each one. So Western Stars for me, and I've seen the film 3 or 4 times, so you probably all know where I'm going to go with this.
Yeah.
Is a demonstration of what a great artist he is. I think if he'd played Born to Run type songs for the rest of his life, or Born in the USA, and I got bored, and I think he'd have got bored, and the fans would have got bored. They're great albums, but to mix it up a bit, like, you know, say like someone like Bowie did, or the Beatles did, that kind of thing. You know, these are the top artists mix it up. So I was very pleased to hear Western Stars. I thought this is a nice shift from previous ones. And even kind of Magic and those things was a bit more classic Bruce. Working on a Dream, that kind of thing. It's a bit more classic Bruce. But Western Stars was a nice change. It's had a 60s feel to it. I love the way the album started, and I love the, particularly in the film, I love the narration. I know it's kind of like an American dream type story of the loner walking the country and things like that. But, that didn't matter. I took it as a kind of piece of fiction. I like the storytelling, and I love the album. Again, I play that a lot. I'd say a couple of tracks on this, particularly the single like Hello Sunshine or Hitchhiking.
Yeah.
So I love them. I love them.
Yeah, one of the things that I really liked is I've said this feels like a collection of like Zane Grey or Louis L'Amour or even Elmore Leonard, you know, the guy, you know, it feels like a collection of short stories,
Yeah,
similar to Nebraska felt like a collection of short stories. So
yeah.
I agree with you. It is this really it is interesting, right, to see what he's doing that. And I agree with you. And that's why I get grumpy sometimes when why well, I don't like this. Well, okay, that's cool if you don't like it. Like someone says, and we'll get to the covers album, and you may disagree, but you know, people are like, "Ugh, waste of time." I'm like, no, he wants to do it. Let him do it. If you don't like, I mean, See Your Sessions is an album that I listen to maybe every once in a while. You
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
just not something that speaks to me, partly because my dad used to sing Froggy Went a Courtin', and Bruce does not do it the way my dad did. So
yeah.
therefore Bruce is wrong
Mm.
because so I it's the same way for a writer. I want him or her to push different boundaries. There are certain writers that, like, especially like in detective novels or something, where it's the same book every time, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
Bruce isn't doing it. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Western Stars, I think the film was brilliant. I hope we get at least one Western Star in the tour. I think there's too much else for them to cover. We may not get one, but I would
I
love,
hope, I
yeah,
hope.
yeah, me too. All right, continue on.
Letter to You, you asked about. So Letter
Yeah,
to You, again, it's kind of a return to more classic Bruce. And of course, he did, was it three of the tracks were from the early 70s or something like that.
yeah,
Again, seen the film a number of times on Netflix. Uh, I like the documentary aspect of it. We saw a different side of Bruce on the film. I know you asked me about the album, I'll come back to that, but certainly on the
sure.
film, I saw Bruce, the chief executive in charge of his company type, and we saw him as the boss. You know, we wondered why he got the nickname. I know people say it's because he collected money for his band, but he's the boss. He determined how the songs were played. He played them to the band. This is how you do it. They went off and did it. They were fine. I think the only person who kind of gave him a little nudge at times was Van Zandt. Well, do you might want to think about doing it this way? Oh, okay. You know, he's like he's almost like the part he played in The Sopranos, isn't he? And,
So, Alex, when I
yeah.
watch this, and I've talked to several people about this, and my son just watched the Letter to You documentary for the first
Mhm.
time this past weekend. And I brought it up to him. You know, little Steven has said the reason why he was comfortable playing Silvio in The Sopranos is he had played that role with Bruce
Oh, really?
his
Yeah.
whole life.
I was a bit
And
surprised because it's the first time
right. And
I've seen The
so,
Sopranos, but not in that
yeah.
role. Yeah.
And so I thought that was so interesting, right? That you see him doing that. You see,
Mm.
and they show that scene of him when they were in young and then
Yeah.
old, and Steven
Yeah.
is still the one. Little Steven's like, well, I don't think you need this. I don't think you need here. And like, okay. And then the point where, like, when Bruce says, if anyone is in doubt, look at me, right? And it is
Yeah.
that CEO, that
Yeah.
leadership you mentioned. You do see that very well.
There was a scene at the end as well where they were in a semicircle around him and he was addressing them about what a good job they'd done and that kind of thing. I thought, well, it
Yeah.
reminds me of my days in a corporation where we delivered a project and the CEO or
Yes.
the manager stood there and thanked us. And he was very similar kind of relationship with the band.
Yes,
But
absolutely. I agree.
in terms of the music, yeah, I love Letter to You. It's another one that, I still play very regularly. Sometimes you get an album, don't you, and you play it and think that's fantastic, and then 3 or 4 plays, it kind of gets
Yeah.
towards the side and that kind of thing. But Letter to You, I'll put that on if I fancy a relaxing time. You know, if it's not the river, it's, you know, Letter to You will come out as well. I just really like it, and I think because he's older and because I'm older, yeah, okay, then Western Stars was fiction. This isn't fiction. This is reality. He's talking about people he lost, friends he used to play in a band. I used to play in a band. Okay, stop. But, you know, I get that. I get, you know, these are my old friends. This is that. I still see some of my old band members even now, like 40, 50 years later. So again, he was his lyrics were talking to me as well. So it was it's a great album. I'd say it's a great album. It's another 5-star out of 5-star for me.
And it's so I will always have a special place for it in my heart because of when it was released. Right, we had just gone through this year of pandemic. Both the UK and US, the world was on this political upheave, and I made the joke a lot that if I could have gotten a new Springsteen album and a new president in 2020, maybe 2020 will not be the worst year of ever, right? And so yeah, I think I will always, and it's a good album. The songs hold up. They're good songs. They're strong songs. And to be that late in his career and to still have that kind of energy and that kind of creative spark is really impressive.
It's very unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
Was he 72 when he made the album, or 70? I can't remember. In his early 70s.
Yeah, exactly.
And his singing has passion, band has passion, the message has passion, and he's in his 70s, so he's still got it.
Yes, he really does. Yeah. All right. So the covers album.
The covers album.
Yes.
I liked the Seeger sessions a lot. I'm less keen on the covers. It's probably the first Springsteen. It is the first Springsteen album I haven't bought as a hard copy.
Okay.
I have it on Spotify, and I've listened to it 3 or 4 times, but I can't quite get into it. I like the songs. I agree with his choice of songs. That's great. And again, I'm not knocking someone who is bringing us these kind of songs, doing some covers of them as he did with the Seeger sessions. I think he puts a lot of energy. Again, he's Springsteen. I think he only knows one way, and that's full on sort of super steroid type explosion type of singing. The thing that I didn't care for, I think, was the music and the production.
Okay.
If I could be a little bit technical.
No, I appreciate that.
I'm not an expert in these things, but it's just my ears. It kind of harks back to me to the Lucky Days type of time, when great songs, like the albums, but I didn't feel the musicians behind him. And I know, I think it was Ron Aniello did most of the parts on the album, and for me that's where it fell down. And I wrote an article on it, actually, if ever you want to look it up, about it, and saying, with the Seeger sessions or with Western Stars, he handpicked a number of top musicians. So they weren't the E Street Band, but they really were good musicians. And I thought, why didn't he look for some great soul musicians, perhaps some who played on the tracks originally? He could do it. He's Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. My hope, I enjoyed it more than you did, though. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I do think that it will be interesting. The rumor is they're going to do a couple of those on the tour. And I think with the E Street Band, with them playing it with the horns, that could be something pretty special. So yeah.
Well, just going back to Lucky Town and Human Touch.
Yeah.
He plays those songs with the E Street Band live. They're a whole different proposition.
Yeah, they really are, aren't they?
And I think these songs, which are great songs, will come out well live with the E Street Band, because it's the E Street Band, so
Yeah. All right, so Alex, how we found each other is you put out, I caught your article, 4 amazing Springsteen songs you may not know.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit of how, now you kind of tongue in cheek, you picked, To Spell Out the Boss, which I loved. I thought that was kind of nice.
Oh yeah.
But so tell me a little bit about how you picked those 4 songs. By the way, all great songs.
I trying to remember what songs I did now, but I like to give the articles a bit of a twist. So I just want to say these the 5 greatest Bruce Springsteen songs that you've never heard. I like to just spell out the word boss, and then it's kind of, I'll pick 4. And they came from largely my favorite album. Oh, some of my favorite albums. I like Devils and Dust. I know it's very successful and things. I don't hear it mentioned, but I like it, as I mentioned, when he shakes things up and does something different. Devils and Dust is kind of the third of the folky trilogy, but I do like the album. And of the 3, Nebraska, Tom Joad, and Devils and Dust, I listen to Devils and Dust more, which is always, I like them all the albums, but when it, like years later, what do I play? Play Devils and Dust, and I particularly like Black Cowboys.
Well, and one of the reasons why I like that is my first show was a Rising show in 2002.
Yeah.
I had listened a little bit to the Rising, but not where I knew every song, right and left. So when Devils and Dust came out, and I saw that I had a ticket to see him, I wore that CD out, right? Like I knew every song. I was going to be ready. I was sitting there, and for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, I had my pen ready to take the test, right? Like if he plays a Devils and Dust song, I'm going to know it. And so I will always have a lot of affection for that album because it was my second live show, and it was the first show that I felt like I had done my homework. So so I agree with you.
The thing about Black Cowboys that where I picked for the B of Boss, I do remember that.
Yeah.
Was I like the story again.
Yeah.
It was a story, I believe, set in a suburb of New York City or Brooklyn or something, about a poor family or a man who's trying to escape from the crime and the poverty of his area by studying with the help from his mother. And I think the title came from a book of some kind. I read somewhere, but I can't remember. But again, it's like a fantastic story. He's told the story, and I feel it, as well as being a great song. So what I did was, again, I chose I think one of the O's was One Step Up from Tunnel of Love, and a very big album, and people will know this song. So says, okay, you may not know. In Tunnel of Love, generally people think of the hit singles, Brilliant Disguise, and the title track and things like that. But I thought tracks like One Step Up and Two Faces, Walk Like a Man, were very powerful words. And because it was a breakup, one step up, two steps back, he was talking about his relationship, and the words really kind of rang true. We've all kind of been in that situation. So again, the big singles are the big singles. And they're great for that reason, and they're commercial. But One Step Up was one of the reasons I chose that lesser known track, was because it was quite raw, I thought, the lyrics, as well as being just a fantastic song, quite acoustic-y, wasn't it? Nice riff.
So he was in Houston, Texas, during the High Hopes tour, not the River tour, the High Hopes tour. And a guy had a sign, play One Step Up. And if you do a Google search, you can find it. And Bruce says, has not been played by the full E Street band since, blah, blah, blah. And he makes a joke. You have made your bed. We do not know this song. You have made your bed, sir. And he starts it, and then he has Patty sing, and then the band slowly joins. And it is it's hard for me to say, oh, these are my greatest moments, but in my mind, that was one of the moments that go, okay, I'm seeing something special here. I'm going to remember. I'm going to treasure. Yeah.
I'm going to look that one up. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd seen something similar when they found out Prince had died, and they played Purple Rain, and they had a shot in the back, didn't they, where they were quickly, and after about 10 minutes they had it, and they went out and played it.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. They are all in purple. Everyone had worn something. Yeah, that is beautiful. Yeah. Why have you always had an interest in writing, Alex?
Yes, I've always been into writing. At school, English was my number one um, top subject, and I used to write stories there at school.
Hmm.
Um, it became less when I started work. I used to work for a telecommunications company, which didn't really initially value anyone being creative. But when I switched to marketing, then you know, my creative
Got to do your creative
wordsmith
muscles.
abilities came out.
Hmm.
So I always liked writing, and I used to carry on. I carried on writing. I found I was using social media like Facebook and things like that before I left the company as to do some writing just for free. I'd just write something and I'd put
Yeah.
some stories. Um, yeah, writing is a big interest, like music or like you. I think sport as well has played a big part.
Sure.
Three things. Yeah.
Um, is Medium where most of your articles are being published?
At the moment, Medium is where most of my articles are being published. I've tried a few platforms, and I even tried. But I do have my own website, but that's for the English language. When I had a sideline in English
Okay.
because of my kind of love of language,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of hassle to. I don't. If you run your own website, it's a lot of hassle, isn't it, to run your own website?
Yes.
Kind of update it and change like things and whatever. And I want to write, not do a website. And so I think I found Vocal Media first, and then I found Medium through Vocal.
Okay.
There's a couple of other platforms that I publish on a number of platforms, but Medium's my main one because that's where I seem to find a classic rock audience, but also an audience for my short fiction.
Okay.
It's shortish term. You're never going to make a living on Medium. You
Right.
do earn money, but I'm talking like not a
Do you
lot.
think you're going to write a book?
Yeah, I'm kind of working to. I'm working first off to as a. Well, I've written some books to do with English language, but again, I've stopped doing that now because
Yeah.
it's kind of done. A number of the articles and a number of the fiction on medium.com I will package up as with my first book and
As like a collection of articles
collection of articles and a
and short
collection of
stories?
short stories.
Nice.
I
Good.
try to make, as you kind of hinted at, my articles are never quite serious. So if I'm going to do the 4 Bruce Springsteen songs, they're going to spell BOSS or something
Yeah.
like that. So
Yeah.
I tried to put a little twist. I wrote a story called The Ambush on Medium, and I published it elsewhere. A short story, like I don't know, 1,200 words, 5-6 minutes,
Yeah.
about an ambush in Arizona. It's a cowboy story and outlaws. But within the story, I hid something like 10 song titles of Bruce Springsteen. So there'll always be a little twist somewhere. And I did another story, like a Star Trek themed story, where all the characters were named after characters from Beatles songs. There'll be a story, even if it's a straight story. You've got to look for a little twist, and that's kind of my little.
So you'll have to send me the link to both of those.
Okay, I will do.
Last night I was at a book signing for Brad Meltzer, who is he has a brand new book out. In fact, it's I've got it right here. It's The Nazi Conspiracy. It's a true story about there was the Nazis had a plot to kill Churchill, Stalin, and FDR when they were having their first face-to-face thing. Right. But anyway, Brad's first thriller was called The 10th Justice, and it was set. A guy was a clerk in the Supreme Court here in the US, and Brad named all the Supreme Court justice members after characters in the comic book Alan Moore's Watchmen. And he said if you weren't a comic book fan, you didn't notice, but he did that. So that's good. You'll have to send me both stories. Alex, I feel like we just got started, but as we were talking, this is my lunch hour. So I'm going to have you coming on again. I
I'm
want,
pleased to come on again. Yeah.
yeah, because there's more we need to talk about. Maybe we can do it
Sure.
after you see him on the tour.
Yes,
I
July.
also,
July, I see it.
okay, and I absolutely want to, when you're ready to promote the book, I want to have you
Thank you.
on. So let's try to do this on a regular basis. Um, but I got to ask you the Mary question before I get you out of here.
Oh, the
And
Mary
so,
question.
yes.
Yeah.
So let me set the expectation just in case you're
Mhm.
a fan of Alex's and you've never listened to Set Listing Bruce before. I end every podcast with the Mary question. So, Jay Armstrong was an honors English teacher who recently retired, and he would, when he taught high school English, he would spend 2 days breaking apart Thunder Road. His class would read it. They talk about the themes. They discuss the imagery Bruce is using. They compare it to other American poets like Robert Frost. And at the end of the 2 days, he would at the class would have to answer the question, does Mary get in the car? So Alex, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
She does, but she just needed a bit of persuasion.
Okay.
And Bruce was smooth talking, and for me, he got in. You know, she got in the car.
I love it. I love it. Um, where's the best way for us to, if someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
Well, they can. I've got a number of social media sites. I publish my social media sites, whether they're Twitter or Facebook or what else have I got? I don't know, medium.com.
Yeah.
You can get me. I publish as by Alex Markham
Okay.
because Alex Markham was taken by a very prominent doctor in the UK, so I couldn't use. So I had to think of something else.
Yes.
So it's by Alex Markham, and you'll find me at Twitter, Facebook, and Medium.
So I added DFW to my Twitter handle because I was
Oh,
getting people going, so Reverend Jackson, and just
oh, of
giving
course,
me
yeah,
all
yeah,
kinds of stuff. So
yeah,
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 that's
yeah.
great. Alex, this was just wonderful. I appreciate you so much. We will do this again. This was a
It
lot of
was
fun.
fun.
Yeah,
It's never not fun talking about Bruce with another Bruce expert.
absolutely. We appreciate that. All right. Go, listeners, go check out Alex's work. Send him, make some comments on the articles. Tell him you heard about it on Set Listing Bruce. We are going to have him back. In the meantime, let's be kind, let's be safe, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. There we go. Another episode. I'm about to go through a couple of things where you can reach me and give me feedback. So if you want to skip this, I understand, but I do hope you check it out every once in a while. I'm available on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. The show is available at SetListingBruce. You can send me an email, setlistingbruce@gmail.com. You can send me a voicemail at 469-249-2442. I am currently doing a few other podcasts. Perfectly Good Podcast, John Hyatt from A to Z, where Sylvan Groth and I discuss every John Hyatt song in alphabetical order. My Babylon 5 podcast is Last Best Hope for Conversation, where Lou, Karen, and I discuss every episode of Babylon 5 in chronological order. I still am doing Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast with my brother in time, Charles Skaggs. And then finally, How Many Podcasts, the only podcast on the internet that counts, where my buddies and I discuss pop culture. You can go to our Patreon page and support the podcast for as little as $1 a month. You can go to our Facebook page, like, and please go to iTunes or wherever you get your podcast and leave a 5-star rating and review for all of the podcasts that I'm doing. It's okay if you don't listen to them, but if you subscribe and rate, it really will make my day better. Thank you, and I will talk to you soon.
You just heard the fun talking, hard rocking, music loving, album ranking, fan thinking, joy spreading, lyric reading, story sharing podcast that is the one, the only Set Listing Bruce. The theme for Set Listing Bruce was written by David Rosen, used by permission.
And we're done. Good job, sir. That was fun.
That was fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you did too. I appreciate it.
I don't get many people willing to listen to me talking about Devils and Dust and Point Blank and One Step Up.
If there are a couple of things I've seen a lot of. One, if you grew up in the East Coast, there's a good chance you found Bruce going to summer camp.
Okay.
And secondly, at least a third of my guests will say, I'm just happy. My family is just happy I'm talking to someone else besides them about Bruce.
My wife will be very pleased.
Yes.
Get out of my system.
Yeah. This will come out probably in 2 or 3 weeks. I'll let you know in plenty of time. Keep me posted, my friend. You have a great evening.
And have a good day at work. And thank you so much again for taking time out of your lunch to
it was a blast. I loved it.
Make it 4 a.m.
All right. Thank you, buddy.
Okay.
See you soon.
See you
Bye-bye.
Bye now.